Our our next segment is, as ever, the wonderful Muppets of the Month segment, and this month we have a monthly set Muppet, but then we have for the hopefully for the final time a lifetime achievement offering as well. Do we not?
Shall we do that first?
Go ahead. Yeah, I'm happy to.
Well, famously, when FIFA, the international football body, created the World Cup, they put in a rule that if you won
Oh,
it three
okay.
times, you could keep the jewellery made trophy,
I was wondering where you were
which
going with
Brazil,
this.
which Brazil duly did,
Yes.
and they kept the trophy in perpetuity. I think we have to have a similar rule for the Hobby Lobby.
Okay. Yeah.
They have now appeared so many times in Muppet of the Month that we have to give them basically a lifetime achievement award and then retire that particular award because no one else is ever going to match this particular performance.
Yeah.
The latest escapade from the Hobby Lobby, which is the connected with the Museum of the Bible in Washington, funded by the owners of the Hobby Lobby, who are multi-billionaire evangelical Christians, and nothing wrong with that. But maybe they have more money than sense because the latest problem they run into is having to repatriate 5,000 artifacts to the government of Egypt
Mm.
that were found to have been obtained inappropriately. Um, and but interestingly as well, if there's some very amusing threads about this on in the Twitter sphere and so on, where people are suggesting that not only did they maybe buy these things that were inappropriately exported, but a number of them appear to be fakes anyway.
Yes.
So the quality control maybe wasn't all that it should have been as well. And it's almost as if they went to the antiquities supermarket in wherever and just bought up the entire aisle without looking at what was there. And
Well, one of them, and this
um,
this may not actually be fake, but one of them looks a little bit like the stick men writing in the Sherlock Holmes story, doesn't it? It's
uh, maybe,
yeah. I don't know if they were
yeah.
inspired by that, if this is one of the fakes, but uh,
Well,
it's an
very possible.
yeah, intrigue.
Yeah.
You see, so does this mean then that not only are we retiring them from eligibility for future Muppets, but also that 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 their role as what's the word? Supporters of the arts in terms of the Egyptian craftsmen who make this stuff is going to also diminish.
Supporting small businesses in Cairo, yeah,
Yes.
uh, and Jerusalem. Um,
Oh, yeah, of course. Yes, yes. Mm.
and
Patrons.
Baghdad probably, and Baghdad as well. Yeah, but absolutely, patrons of small businesses
Patrons of the arts.
across the patrons of small business across the Middle East. Um,
Yep.
they've done more for the development of craft skills in the Middle East than anybody else in living memory.
Mm. Mm.
Um, uh, Look, I made the allusion to the Jules Rimet Trophy in Brazil in the World Cup at the moment. Yes, we give them the lifetime achievement award, and they retire with the trophy.
Mm.
But then Brazil still play in the World Cup, so I think we might be seeing them again, unfortunately. But hey, let's see.
Let's hope it doesn't become our hobby to point out their inadequacies. Okay, speaking of inadequacies, our sort
Mm.
of garden variety Muppet of the month this month is a story coming out of the Manchester Evening News. With the headline, "A huge new theme park is opening an hour's drive from Manchester, and it's inspired by a book that says aliens have visited Earth." This book is infamous in the world of archaeology. It is
Yeah. Oh, hang on.
Chariots.
Are you talking about the book by the famous convicted fraudster and former hotelier?
If you're talking about Eric von Daniken,
The same.
Chariots of the Gods, which was an international bestseller when it was released. It has an interesting publishing history, which we'll back to in a moment.
Well,
Um, but also, arguably, it is the granddaddy of what would become Ancient Aliens and the sort of the opening up of archaeological, especially monumental buildings and builders in history and the past,
yeah.
to speculation about contacts with other worlds and decades later the History Channel. came up with that wonderful TV series, Ancient Aliens. In this instance, Blackpool Council is preparing to use compulsory purchase powers to secure
Mm.
land for a £300 million entertainment complex. That's a lot of money going into what is not even speculative fiction, it's just nonsense. It means land and property owners within the boundaries of land earmarked for the Blackpool Central project can expect to be forced to sell up so that redevelopment can start. And there's a very grand image of people on a kind of a Disney kind of Space Mountain type ride, seeing the pyramids in a sort of a um, oh, what was that film? Stargate, in a Stargate kind of setting
Yes.
with a UFO landing pad and lush gardens and stuff.
Do you think they're going to have a holographic Giorgio to sort of
Oh,
narrate the whole thing?
aliens, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
He pops up every so often and just says aliens.
aliens, yeah, yeah, maybe. So go on, tell me a little bit about this book because you stunned me when we were writing this agenda. I had no idea about this because on the one hand, yes, I was explaining to you, or rather, I was describing it to you as being infamous within the realm of archaeology as one of the sort of the founding tomes of this thorn in our professional side. Um, and I thought at most dangerous, it was merely a distraction from actual archaeology, in particular, for example, the Nazca lines and the function thereof. But you were saying that there's even more in that delicious cake. There's another layer. I didn't even know about
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Um, Basically, the Eric von Daniken book, obviously, it is seen as the fountainhead of the ancient aliens, the ancient astronaut theory, as they refer to it
Hmm.
on the program that should not be named because it gets far too much publicity anyway. Um, but in fact, ever since it was published and academics started looking at it, people have been saying, well, actually, what von Daniken was saying isn't actually new. He's actually borrowing ideas, to be kind, from people like most famously people like H.P. Lovecraft.
Hmm.
Um, and also around the time the book was being conceived, people like Carl Sagan and so on were speculating about the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligences. The things like the SETI project were being set up and
Hmm.
search for extraterrestrial intelligence and things like that. So, it was legitimate and even respectable academic astronomy to talk about the possibility of alien life and what it would be, what form it would take, and whether it was possible to make contact with it or it would make contact with us.
Hmm.
And obviously, again, we're sitting on top of a whole tradition of science fiction that postulates those kind of contact, benign and violent. So H.G. Wells and the War of the Worlds and so on. The interesting so when the convicted fraudster and hotelier Eric von Daniken sat down to write the book, and I'm perfectly safe. You look up the references. He is,
Hmm.
and he was.
Hmm.
The He wrote the book. He was writing the book in the mid to late '60s, and when he presented it to a publisher, it was seen as pretty unpublishable
Hmm.
in the form that he presented it. So it was heavily rewritten by a man called Wilhelm, nicknamed Utterman, um, under the pseudonym of William Rogersdorf. Now, one of the reasons he might have written under a pseudonym was that he was a former journalist on the main Nazi newspaper in the 1930s and 40s.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Um,
So I was trying not.
and
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes. So you could argue it has a somewhat checkered pedigree. So one author is a convicted fraudster and hotelier, and the other one is a former Nazi propagandist. And in fact, the first edition, the royalties were split 70-30. Von Daniken got 70%, and Wilhelmsdorf, Rogersdorf rather, got 30%. And this was uncovered by German news magazines some time ago. It's not new news. It's not new news. It's just not particularly well known.
So
You know,
so when people talk about how these theories are problematic, not least because there's
yeah.
no evidence to back them up, but also they're problematic.
Not least because they're complete bollocks. Come
Yeah, well,
on.
exactly. I'm trying to be somewhat polite, but yes, okay, they are complete and utter. Um, th and also that they are problematic because they posit that anything built by people,
Yeah.
for example, outside the modern European scope of civilization, even our own ancestors, even Stonehenge is considered to be potentially a UFO construction in these theories. That stuff, in particular in foreign countries, is therefore built by aliens because those people couldn't possibly have done it. That
Yes.
has racist tropes. This
Yes.
appears to coincide with the journalists' leanings potentially as well, or at the very least, it's not a, it's, it doesn't help.
He's dead. You can say what you like.
No. But, no, but the point is, it really doesn't help that this book was written or rewritten
But
by a Nazi.
uh, I think that's a fairly reasonable conclusion to draw. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. That
And now we're
that
having a theme park built in northern England.
put it this way: that the socio-political environment that pertained when the co-author was a young man and working might have consciously or unconsciously led to biases that he continued to exercise through his later life and career.
Oh, that's a good way of putting it. I like it. But nonetheless, that is now also being now used to make a theme park in northern England, which doesn't fit particularly well or happily with the mega segment that we've done this month on the context of British archaeology.
No, but there has been some very interesting. There's been some really interesting suggestions on archaeological in the archaeological Twitter on that. Given that they're going to have to do archaeological because under current planning they're going to have to go do
Yeah,
archaeological impact assessments and so on. That if, for example, that they found the remains of a crushed flying craft of some description with maybe some three-fingered skeletons with elongated skulls during the initial test pitting, that might actually cause problems with the with carrying through the development. Anyway, I'll leave that with our viewer.
so if they found evidence backing up, they'd have to stop the thing. That is quite funny. Yeah, that's quite funny. Yeah.
Well, come on, you must have seen Quatermass in the Pit when they find the UFO in the underground station.
Well, exactly, and yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
These things happen.
These,
That was a documentary. It's just they put it out as fiction so people wouldn't realise, and it was preparing people for the aliens.
yeah, well, yeah, and John Carpenter as well did a wonderful job preparing people for the aliens as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um,
Not to mention Steven Spielberg. I mean, you know.
yeah, well, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. And you can see the hotel in Hollywood where Neil Armstrong used to go and sit by the pool after a day's filming.
Um, just to be clear, as good scientists, I should say I'm more than open to the notion of intelligent life in the universe.
Of course. It's
Yeah.
just not here. As the Monty Python universe song says, there's better pray there's intelligent life up there in space because there's bugger all down here on the Earth.